First of all, I want to thank everyone on the panel that they took the time and they honored us to be here on the panel for our lunch event. We're super hyped to have every single one of them here. And we believe it's going to be a great discussion. So we have a slide over there with the names, but we're going to have everyone for 1 minute say about how long you have been with the company and their experience in insurance, and then we're going to start the discussion. So first, Bob.
Yep. Hi, everyone. My name is Bob Mazika. I'm representing Munich Re Group. I've been with the company many years. We'll just leave it at that. What I'm responsible for is actually driving innovation out here from Silicon Valley for our whole group. Munich Re Group representation of health, life, and all property and casualty. We have primary as well as reinsurance, and we're really helping to bring and foster innovation from Silicon Valley back to our corporation.
Thank you, Bob. Neil?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Really great to be here. I'm Neil Bowman. I'm a partner in Deloitte. I've been with Deloitte, I think 19 years if I do the math, which is scary. I live in New York. As you can tell from the accent, I wasn't born there. I'm Australian by birth. And I live in New York with my Australian wife and our 2 New York kids, which is a little bit of an interesting experience. As I said, been with the firm for a while. My background is I help pretty much throughout my career, even before Deloitte, is working to help financial institutions, particularly in the retail space, compete and grow and succeed and change their business models and things like that. I have 2 roles with the firm right now that I hold concurrently. The first one is I run our insurance practice globally. So all the functions of Deloitte, whether it's consulting, audit, tax, all the stuff I don't understand, I actually have the pleasure of leading that team. And from a US perspective, I lead our insurance consulting team also in the US.
Thank you. Faye?
Hi, my name is Faye Sahai. I'm representing AIG. I head up our Global Innovation Center. We actually have one here in San Francisco. And there are 3 different ways you can engage with AIG. One is we can invest in your startup. We can partner with you in that. One is we can actually use your product with our clients. The other one is we can actually promote your product to our 90 million clients. We're in about 100 countries. We're also in the commercial and consumer space. So we have home, auto, life, kind of retirement products, but we also do a lot of properties, fleet, marine, satellite launches, crown jewels, high net worth individuals, so a very long list from that standpoint. So we're excited to be here and also connect with you.
Thank you. Stephen?
Absolutely. Stephen Young. I've been with USAA for about 8 years. My background is in the digital and design space. Work now in the P&C space, the P&C innovation space. So our group works on things that USA doesn't currently offer to our members. So naturally, we work with a lot of early stage companies or later stage companies that have new products and services coming into the market. We're a member-based company, focused on the military and their families, and take great pride in serving them.
Thank you. So the panel is going to be 30 minutes discussion. We're trying to cover some of the questions that we've been asked a lot, and then 15 minutes Q&A. So feel free to ask questions at the end. So with that being said, I'd like to ask Stephen that why do you think innovation in insurance is happening now, rather than 5 years ago? What created this momentum?
Yeah, fair question. I think I'll answer it in 3 parts. So I think generally we have more connectivity, right? Whether it's in the auto line or at home, cars are more connected, things within the home are more connected, and naturally insurance is all about data. So with connection comes more data and more opportunity for us personally to serve our members. And then also with that connectivity comes a more of a digital focus rather than previously where we did a lot of our servicing over the phone or over direct mail. We have a lot of that digital focus now. So I think one, that drives innovation for sure. And then I think from a startup perspective, you've seen the last couple of years startups say, hey, I can go into these very large industries, transportation, hotel, etc., and possibly even disrupt them. So naturally, I think as a startup, coming from the startup community myself, you begin to think, okay, well, who's the next dinosaur and who has billions in their revenue? And naturally, I think you land on insurance. Though probably a little hard, but I think naturally, you come to the next big industry. And then from an industry perspective, I believe the times are changing for us, and I think the panelists would agree. We are no longer being compared against our traditional competitors. I think our members are having experiences in other areas, digital companies, Amazon, Apple, etc. And then when they come and they interact with us, they're expecting the same level of interaction, the same level of service, same experience. And so I think from that perspective, our industry and at USA, we see that happening, and we know that we just have to get better and continue to evolve as we've done for the last numerous years.
Thank you. Neil, what do you think?
I was going to I completely agree with you. I think one of the interesting things is we do a lot of research in the disruption space in general. I think one of the interesting lessons that I've learned is that disruption's actually predictable, right? It's not random, it's actually predictable. And you can predict it where there's a confluence of two things. The first thing is where there's customer friction or points of customer friction, and when there's untapped pools of profit potential. And the reality is, I think everyone in this room that's in the industry would agree that the insurance industry, irrespective of which line of the insurance industry, it doesn't matter, there is, oodles of points in which there's friction with the customer, and there's enormous opportunity of untapped profit potential. I think it's been latent for a while, and I think now it's coming to a situation where customers' expectations and capital and all that kind of stuff and technology is coming together and starting to solve for those problems. So I think it's a real exciting time.
Yeah, I would add, I mean, you're talking about customer engagement. It's obviously a big issue. Millennials now are expecting much more. And it's not just it's not just a connection on their mobile device. Everyone used the words digital. It's not just that. They want more transparency in their products. Insurance is very difficult to understand what is actually being covered. What is at the end of the day? People today want that transparency. They really want to understand that. And our insurance industry has resisted this for such a long time. And now with the digital, now with the availability of data, they want to know what am I actually being covered for. So you're getting user-based insurance. You're getting, no longer this 12-month policy that you're not quite sure what's being covered. So it's a convergence of many different aspects: the availability of the data, the customer engagement, dissatisfaction, and so on.
Okay. I would just want to add one thing, Ali, to that too. There's a lot of interesting new risks. So now that everything is connected, there's a whole cybersecurity risk, right? Every week we see someone else that's been hacked. And from an insurance side, we need to kind of address how do we cover you for those. So there's some new emerging risk. As we look at the autonomous car, it's not the driver's fault now. Is it the car's fault?
Risk.
Is it the software's fault? Yeah. So you see that we're having to pivot on accountability, liability, and where we're going with risk. As we see a lot of emerging technology coming out, you also see all different risk categories and in these areas too. You kind of probably have heard a lot about drones. Now people are getting scared about drones. And now there's drone insurance, believe it or not. Now there's cybersecurity insurance. So I mean, as you look at it, there's some emerging, as we get more and more innovative, there's some emerging risks as well that insurance needs to respond.
Thank you. So Neil, I'd like to ask you, what do you think are the alternatives for insurance companies to innovate? Like everyone wants to innovate, but how could they do it? Is it they should start a venture arm? Is it that they need to, work with acceleration programs?
Well, I don't think there's any set formula or solution to these types of things, and I think it would be fair to say, and I turn to my colleagues in the industry as well, that I think the insurers are learning how to play the innovation and disruption game in an organic way, right? And I think that's important. It's important for the startups in the room to understand that these big monolithic, capital-intensive businesses, big balance sheets and lots of money, they're learning and wanting to learn from you as well around different business models. They want to experiment, they want to try things out. And I think, we see some common patterns, but they're not solidified in any way. So we see patterns where insurance companies are fundamentally setting up investment or VC-like arms where they're taking some of their insurance investment capacity and looking to invest it into the marketplace and at the same time get to know some of you folks and get to understand how you operate, right? And then I think there's another model where, on the other side of the extreme, is where they're trying to figure out how to partner with you in a different way, because your needs around partnership is different to much more mature and much more traditional organisations. I think they're trying to, and they're learning very, very fast. But for the startups in the room, you have an opportunity to really partner on and engage with the insurance companies because they want to learn from you as well. I think that's a testament for all the people in the room. But I will say that there's generally 3 areas that insurers look to leverage the stuff that you develop, and one is around products. I think you covered that pretty well. I mean, the really cool thing about insurance is insurance companies are not just threatened by disruptive technologies and innovation. It's not just threatening their business model. There's an enormous amount of opportunities, right? New products, adjacencies, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a really exciting time. So one is around products or offerings. The second area is around business models, right? Anywhere across the value chain of an insurance company, whether it's around pricing and selecting risk differently, whether it's around managing a policy, whatever it is around the core value chain, that's an area to engage around them. And the other areas around, and we touched on it, is around the whole service model, right? We can't say it enough, but consumers' expectations are not shaped by other insurance companies, they're shaped by other industries, right? So the insurance industry by a whole is trying to just really leapfrog their capabilities in that space.
Thank you. Faye?
Yeah, just to add to Neil's points in that area, I think what you'll see is several of all of the insurance companies here and the startups is that there's an increased activity in this area. But some other interesting ways is Plug and Play, I think, is a wonderful example of that, of building an ecosystem that are bringing us together and matching us together. There's also...
Thank you.
Of course.
All the buttons to press.
I know. Yeah. All the wonderful...
Did we record that? Please let me know that we have that on record.
But accelerators, incubators. Another one I'd see starting to really blossom is innovation challenges. So now I see kind of in a sense, what is the X Prize going to be for insurance? We see a lot of transformation happening in insurance, a lot of merger and acquisition, a lot of activity in this area, a lot of new investments. So I really encourage, it is through networks such as these and kind of alliances, but when you are, for some of the startups, and really try to understand the insurance industry before you go in. Understand that client you're trying to go in. So if you're coming into AIG, understand that I'm global. So that's one of the questions I'm going to be asking. How many countries are you in? Do you know how to operate in those? Your scalability. One big concern that we have is security. So are you aware of our security regulations, where we are in those things in those areas? But I definitely see there's an increase on both sides. I saw an interesting kind of fact that I think with the insurance side, given all our regulations, it's actually the prime marriage between startups and big insurance companies. Because we need you and you need us to get the scalability, to understand the regulation, the subject matter experts. You have a wonderful panel here in the audience, but this is a wonderful way to kind of accelerate both our charters and missions in that.
Well said. Yeah, I also think, just from a cultural perspective, the insurance companies have to accept that the industry is changing, right? I mean, we've led the way. New things are coming out, and it fundamentally is going to change in the next 5 to 10 years. So it's a cultural thing, I think, internally in the company, and you have to get buy-in for that, which is very difficult because you have people who've been in the insurance industry for their entire lives, and they don't believe that in 10 years' time it's going to be fundamentally different. And I think beyond that, we have to adopt a culture of testing and learning to understand what we can provide, in our case, for our members. And how do we test and learn? We test and learn in many different ways. Being part of Plug and Play is one, working with startups and accelerators, others running pilots within the 2 memberships, and one of those other ways. But those are very difficult because how do you test and learn products that are regulated? So it's a very difficult challenge to do, but we have to get better, reduce that cycle time so that we can learn more every year quickly. And then I also think fundamentally we need to embrace sort of the UX and the design culture, because again, to what we all spoke about a little bit, is we're being measured against other competitors, and other competitors who who do really good at user experience, the Disneys of the world and whatnot. So if we really embrace that culture in every facet of our business, I think it will do well for innovation.
Thank you. Bob?
I would just like to add two things going off on the high level for the insurance companies that are maybe looking into innovation. You know, I have the privilege to talk to many companies, many different industries, many insurance companies start innovation. I will say you have a certain culture, a certain behavior in your company, and you need to learn to use that and find the best way to adapt. There's many different models, as Neil has spoke. You can't read a book, say, oh, this is the model we're going to follow. You kind of have to work it when you're in your own company. I often hear executives say, oh, we should act like Google. I cringe when I hear that. You will never be, if you're a large insurance company, you will never be a Google in their culture. But you need to find the pieces that work in your company. To go on to a second point, we mentioned regulation, but and not to be controversial, but that we can help understand our regulation, but also that can't be the block that stops it there. Many other innovations in other industries broke through some regulation change, and I think regulation is going to have to change. But the startups need to work with us and really help and develop ways that we can all change this together, and I think that's a key component. So going back to my first point again about doing what you can in your insurance company now, is just start. You just have to start. There's no other way. We actually came to Plug and Play when I first arrived out here a year and a half ago. It was a great start. It was a great way to get us going. Introduce us to many startups, to many corporations that come to this building, to many visitors you guys get on a daily basis. It's just a fabulous place to start.
Thank you so much. Faye, I know we talked about it a little bit, we touched base on it, but I'd like to get into it a little bit with more details. We're getting a lot of questions in regards to how should startups engage with large corporations and vice versa. So how should corporations engage with startups that some of them are seed stage and they don't have the bandwidth, to work with a lot of the agreements?
I think you see representative of my peers here is so you see now a lot of the insurance companies having a vehicle or a gateway for you to be introduced to the organization. I think there are wonderful contacts in that. As I was kind of mentioning is be clear on your value proposition, possible use cases, do your research on that organization and their strategy, what key problems are they trying to solve or clients they're with in that area, and kind of prepare for that. But I think also try and get it where it's a tight POC. Because what you see with our large organizations, as we were mentioning, it's a little challenging, but if you figure out a way just getting your foot in the door with a tight POC that can prove kind of that value and where you're going and kind of that quick use case that can be done, our job is to try and get you in there and enter the barrier to accelerate it from that. But the tighter you're on. Another one is be clear on your expectations. As Ali was saying, I know some of you are at seed round, some of you are at C round. Have us be familiar with your situation too, because in some large organizations, it does take a lot of time. We have to involve a lot of people on that. And we also need to be clear on and honest on what is the cycle time and where we're going so that we are effective use of each other's time. But be clear with what you're looking for, kind of your expectation, what you'd want from the organization, because I think it starts it off on a long step. So on the right foot from that.
Bob, Munich Re, I believe, has a lot of experience in this. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess some suggestions I would make to the startups when they're dealing with us. First you got to be somewhat a little patient. We're large corporation, many different pieces. Even if you're talking property and casualty, we are worldwide. So we have operations in Asia, Africa, South America. So what we're trying to do is find that right place to do one specific project. Those projects pilots are very important to us because it helps prove the concept. And that's the one thing we have to do is look for that one area. The value proposition is a key one. As another advice for startups, we meet many, especially being out here, we meet many companies and many have similar solutions for certain things. Big data predictive analytics, there's multiple definitions around even what big data predictive analytics, and we meet dozens and dozens of these companies. But if we can really understand what you can bring to the table differently from all the other companies that are doing that, that'll really help. And that'll really help us find that one spot in the company to do that test pilot and really see, does this work? And the opportunities are endless and can grow from there.
Neil, Stephen?
I was going to say something really, this is well covered ground now, but I'm going to offer something really simple. Be prepared to be patient. I mean, the reality is that insurance companies are based on, you know, a risk culture. They want to manage risk. They manage, price, and select risk, and that's how they operate, and they've operated like that for some of them hundreds of years, right? So be prepared to be patient. It'll pay off, right? Be prepared to be patient. Invest in your understanding of the organisation you're talking about. Invest in spending the time to actually understand the culture of the industry. And you know, like any other industries, there's well-honed myths and legends and stuff. Understand that. And just be patient and prepared to spend the time and build that patience into your business plans, because it's going to be important. If you have a well-honed value proposition, if it's compelling, right, the insurance companies want to engage with you, right? They will reward you for being patient if you have all the right components. That would be my sort of offering.
Stephen?
Yeah, I would make a parallel. I would say treat us like a VC firm, right? If you're going to raise money, you want to do research. Some VC firms have a focus that they want to invest in. So research the insurance companies or know what your focus is and see who aligns with you. Do your research, build relationships, right? It's all relationships. What Faye said. Oftentimes, I may meet a company and it's me who's championing the company to the rest of the senior leadership throughout the company. So build genuine relationships with people, and it may take time, right?
Yep.
We may have a focus, we may have an immediate need, but it may come 6 months later, may come 9 months later, who knows? But I think it's a fair parallel there. And then obviously just have a killer product. And likewise, know that to Bob's point, we see a lot of companies that do the same thing, and so we can very quickly smell who's legit and who's not. But I think it's a great parallel, treat it like VCs, and then likewise, we try to engage with you all, and our goal is to we have very clear strategic priorities on our side, so that's one way that we work, and we make sure that we can engage with startups very quickly. So we try to get answers back to startups as quick as possible. Having those clear priorities is a great way to do that. But really trying to get to the point where what is the proof of concept that we're going to do and what is the next step that we want to do. So that's how we would typically engage with companies.
So we're out of time for the questions, but the last question I just have to ask it because it's one of the most important ones. And please, just really short, if we could get it to that point. So we get a lot of interest, especially working with innovation for insurance in general, is that we get a lot of points of interest for every corporation. But I'd like to first ask Bob, what would you say is the hottest trend, especially which one is the easiest one for insurance companies to engage with first? Is it user experience? Is it new products? Is it new business models?
Try to say this quickly, easy and best are two different things. Easier, I mean, you can look at, what's been around, the IoT and sensor devices, things that are going to be loss mitigation, lower your cost. You can implement that, something, say, a little bit more easier. But to me, one of the hottest trends I'm seeing out there in insurance is that true disruptor, that startup for insurance. Meaning they have a new platform to engaging customers, try to provide a new product. But I will say this, they're not necessarily looking to be the next insurance company. And I have a message at the end of this. They need us, the insurance industry, for maybe paper, to maybe the risk carrier at the back end. But I will say this latest trends, and it's a personal observation myself, through talking to many of these companies, is they're getting frustrated working with insurance companies for their lack of speed. And you start hearing talks about they want to become the next carrier. That's a trend to me that we are really close for that next, what Saeed mentioned, that next person coming in. Because if that starts happening, we're at a loss. Where we have an opportunity right now to be part of this and not fighting it at the end of the road.
So because we're 5 minutes behind, in a few words, Stephen, what's your thoughts on this? I know it's hard in a few words. I do understand. I'm sorry. I just don't want to cut too much out of the Q&A
Just say
part.
yes.
Yes. No, I think figuring out member experience, as we call it, is the most difficult thing, right? I mean, we're an insurance company. We have actuaries and underwriters. We can model who's going to leave the room right now or how many people. But what's very difficult for us to do is why you're going to leave the room right now. So I think the hardest thing for us, at the core of it, for USAA specifically, is how do we serve those folks who've served the country, and that comes down to member experience.
Thank you. Neil, Faye?
I would just add the artificial intelligence, data analytics. We sit on, think about all the claims data, the underwriting, and all the models. We definitely think with the machine learning, artificial intelligence, where it's going is going to kind of revolutionize us in that area. At the IoT, kind of was mentioned before, is now the whole connected culture is now, we're really good about managing risk, but can we help prevent risk? Now, can we help predict risk for you? So as you kind of look at it in those ways, those are kind of possibilities. The new business models on where we're going, how you kind of increase in the business and where it's going is also another area.
Thank you. Neil?
So the number one most frequently conversation that we have, well, I have with client executives across the globe in the insurance space is around the Internet of Things. That's the number one. How to use it, how to leverage it, how to exploit it, how does it change my business models, how do I understand it better, how do I learn to play the game? It's all about that. And you can take it into the connected home, the connected office, the connected car, whatever you want. That's the most commonly, so if I did my hit list, that would be maybe the first, second, and third thing that clients want to talk about at any particular point in time.
Thank you. So with that being said, we're going to wrap up the discussion, and we're going to let the audience ask questions. And if you guys don't ask questions, I'm going to ask questions from the audience. So it's up to you.
I heard a prediction from Mr. Young. I believe I heard you say that in 10 years, the insurance industry would be fundamentally different. I heard that correct. Well, I've been hearing that for decades now, so I'm very interested in the specific example of what you have in mind.
Yeah, so if I were to give specifics, I would be a very wealthy person. But I think today we're fundamentally different, right? We see true development, if we look at the auto line, true development of autonomous vehicles, right? The debate arguably is around when that will actually happen, the level or the stage 5 of autonomy will happen. And I think, some people say 10 to 30 years out, but the fact that we have non-traditional companies getting into that space, it's happening. So I think it's just a matter of the time, but I could never predict exactly when it will happen. But I think it's happened already.
I was going to say is, we just did some research, and I'd be happy if anyone wants to send me an email, I'll send it to you. We just finished some research around the whole intersection between the automotive industry and the insurance industry, and really what the economic curve looks like under any scenario. So whether you believe in fully autonomous cars or partially autonomous cars or anywhere in between, it doesn't matter what time frame you look at, all of those scenarios fundamentally point to a material change in the construct of the industry, right? And I think that's important. So that to me is an area that I think is for sure going to change.
Said?
I have a question. If Facebook gets into the insurance business, they already have over 1 billion sign-on users, and they have incredible amount of information even on me. How would you guys compete with them?
Ooh, that was a tough one.
I'll reinsure him.
What
That's
I
my
would do is
favorite answer so far, just saying.
yeah, we'd offer a partnership. Why would they do it on their own? There's an opportunity to partner with a whole bunch of people that are in the room now that have it. I mean, where do they want to make money, and how can we help them make money? Right?
That goes back to my point before, that where that trend is, let's get in and be partner with them, not let them take that over.
Yeah, from I think our perspective, it wouldn't matter too much. We focus on members and what their needs are, and that's been our recipe for success over the last, 80 plus years. So we would just continue to look at the member and make sure we're fulfilling their needs. And if we are fulfilling their needs and they're not leaving, then it doesn't matter who gets into it.
Saeed, just to follow up on that, so Bob, Faye, Stephen, in the last 12 months, have you implemented a single or multiple ideas that you have come across and actually physically implemented into your businesses?
Actually, we have several pilots going on right now. We actually have we worked with a company up in San Francisco on epidemic coverage. We're actually putting a new cover in Asia that can cover epidemic non-property damage, business interruption policy. So yes, it's hard, but we do go, but we need to test and pilot many different things now.
We have drone insurance. Actually, we were one of the first in the FAA for as far as insurance companies and looking at drones. So not only do we insure drones, we use drones in kind of our underwriting and claims areas and looking at that. We've released a robotic insurance as well, and we just released it in our, basically a crowdfunding insurance as well, because we've seen a lot coming in the crowdfunding and the liabilities in that. So that just got released this week as well.
Yeah, and likewise, we have dozens of programs that are in various forms of pilots. Some of them rolled out to full membership, some of them in more limited testing. As small as looking and seeing our members are now participating in ride sharing and their drivers in Uber and Lyft, rolling out protection for them because we see that as a trend in that sense, all the way to drones and using that and using that to do inspections in member homes, to various other things. So definitely there's been a lot of activity over, I was even just the last 12 months, and in-market testing.
Kenny, you have a question?
Sure, Kenny Hawk, Mojo connected car platform backed by Deutsche Telekom and Amazon. Curious about your thoughts on usage-based insurance versus drive-by-mile insurance, and then where do you see things headed with dash cams and how you rate based on having a dash cam in the car?
That's a discussion panel of his own, just saying.
Should have invited me.
You want to start? You want
Yeah, no, I'll go. So the usage-based insurance and that stuff, from the typical North American point of view, it's very selfish on the industry. It's how do we rate better? So I think obviously there's a play there, and obviously we're an insurance company and we want to rate better. But I think more importantly, the data that comes from the car, whether it's dash cams or not, the fundamental question that we ask ourselves is, how can we use this data to improve the members' lives? So whether that's, perhaps it's a wife of somebody who's deployed and she's home or he's home taking care of their kids, how can we use that data to improve his or her life? And I think we do a lot of research there. But it's not as clean cut as just the typical sort of BBI. This is what we're going to do. Rate, have better rating variables.
I'll comment on the UBI, user-based insurance. I think it's definitely going to move forward, and part of that is the economy, the sharing economy. People are looking at their carpooling, car sharing. So there's all these new products coming on. And the statistics are so alarming. The percentage of your car sits in the driveway and so on. I give an example. I own a personal watercraft, right? So growing up in New Jersey, I have a 12-month policy. I have this thing sitting in my garage 10 months of the year. I may drive it on a weekend, I may not. I may use it 4 times a year, but I felt a 12-month policy, which I don't have the transparency what am I actually paying for then? So I think this user-based insurance or pay-by is definitely a trend, and it's going to continue due to several different factors.
And to your video kind of question, auto video and telematics, I definitely think that's a growing area. What we've been looking at is really about the assignment of risk, also kind of awareness too. Is we found in some certain industries that now has evidence on who's liable for that area, and now it's being visibly found. We also found, though, the number of, I think, the quantified self, I don't know how many of you are wearing Fitbits or smartwatches, is the amount of data that's coming in. It just can be overwhelming. And so how do we get really intelligent on that? Mm-hmm. How do we use that as far as alarms, alerts, and being able to quantify what's most important to look at? So we actually worked with Flow and Eurocar in Europe, and they were looking at double-digit number of data metrics just streaming in, and they're like, what do we do with this? And so then we actually started working with an algorithm, and we actually created a challenge for when you rented a Eurocar, you had a driving score, and you could compete with your fellow other drivers, and you would actually win a prize in that week. And we found it changed people's behaviors, because if you have too many metrics, they don't know which one to look at. And if you make it a little gamification, then they were incented from that. So we found that actually had positive results.
Yeah, I would just add quickly, I think you're dead right. I think the actual opportunity around things like telematics and UBI is really around, it's an opportunity for insurance companies to engage in the consumer in a way that the current business model doesn't allow them to do. So the reality is, like, think about what happens. You go buy some car insurance, you shop it around, that's the first point of engagement. The second point of engagement is you get a bill a year later to renew it. And then if the bill's too much and you don't like it, or you happen to watch the wrong TV ad a minute before you got the bill, you're going to shop it around. And the third point is when you make a claim. That's the only point of contact that the insurance company has to build a relationship with you, a brand-based and service-based relationship. A UBI play, if done correctly and done innovatively, allows an insurance company to interact with the consumer in a way they just don't have an opportunity at the moment. And that, to me, is the really powerful play. It's about retention, cross-sell, customer satisfaction, customer lifetime value. It's about all that type of stuff that I think is the really exciting point around it.
Thank you, guys. We're out of time. One last question, if we could do it as short as we can. And just FYI, Mojio is a great device for this kind of telematics. I saw what you did there, Kenny.
Was that the question? Oh, no.
Which is, first of all, I think Bob was on the right track with the future view of how the cloud data that's going to be assembled is going to influence how these transactions are done. Got to bear in mind, we're on a 5 billion-year-old planet. To be thinking in terms of 5 and 10-year progress is really foolish. So by the time we get to the tail end of the millennial generation, there will be a social fund in which the algorithms will control claims for health needs, for insurance needs, for education needs, and for home lending, and so on. So I think that looking at the current models, if you really want to take a future view, being that we're sitting here in Silicon Valley, I would say a lot of these models go away entirely, and we should be thinking about how it's going to be much further out. Bob, hold that line of thinking.
Thank you. So with that being said, we're going to wrap up the panel discussion. Time is done, but they're going to be here. Feel free to ask questions later. Thank you, everyone.